She could see he was nervous about being on the ground, and now having seen the danger firsthand, she was feeling guilty for blowing off his warning. He looked down at her and nodded, okaying her to follow the doctor. The man was kneeling over the row of bodies, and he pulled back a long white sheet revealing the faces of 4 men, all of them clearly not native to the village. The bodies had blood seeping from the eyes and ears, gunshot wounds to their heads. "Who are they?" Riley asked. Paolo shook his head. "I don't know, but these 2 are Korean, and the other men are Iranian. All of their papers say they are Lebanese." "Why would you think they were Iranian?" Pointing to one of the dead men, Paolo said, "Because he told me before the soldiers killed him. He was early symptomatic when we arrived, but soon his behavior changed, and he attacked my staff." Riley pointed at the bodies. "It doesn't look like any disease killed these men. It looks like your soldiers did the killing." Paolo clenched his jaw, causing Jonathan to move closer. "You don't understand. They were dangerous." She shook off his comment and looked around at the nearby area. "Where are the rest of your people? The rest of your staff?" Riley asked. Paolo shook his head and looked away. "Dr. Erickson, why are these men in central Brazil? Why were they here?" he asked, ignoring the question and pointing to the bodies of the dead foreigners. A scream, followed by several gunshots, erupted on the far side of the village. Riley turned to move toward it, but Jonathan stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "It's okay," Paolo said. "It's one of the containment groups." "How is that okay?" Riley asked, her tone turning harsh as more gunfire filled the air. "If any one of the groups shows signs of violence, the soldiers will shoot them." Disgusted, Riley tried to move toward the shooting. "You're executing people for being sick!" she shouted. Jonathan reached out and stopped her. "Doctor, the sample. Please, we need to go." Paolo, overhearing the large man, moved quickly to a set of boxes on the ground near the bodies. "Yes, of course, the samples. And you should take this too," he said, returning and handing Riley an olive green case. "What is it?" she asked. "It's filled with notes, things these men had in their possession. I don't know the language, but perhaps you can get help with it." A woman in a nearby group screamed and attacked another civilian next to her. A soldier raised his rifle to take the pair out as more people rose from the group and overwhelmed him. Other nearby soldiers panicked and fired into the group. Small clusters of villagers began to scream and broke up as the soldiers fired at the fleeing people. No longer debating, Jonathan grabbed Riley by the arm and turned her toward the helicopter, pushing her ahead. She began to protest that she needed to get more information from Paolo, but was cut short. Riley screamed as a round zipped past her and hit the Brazilian doctor just above the right eye. Jonathan pushed her into a crouch and rushed her toward the waiting helicopter. As they ran, she could see that a mob of people was chasing after them. Riley sprinted and reached the open door just as she heard Jonathan's weapon fire. Turning back, she realized her bodyguard had turned and was firing at the attackers. The villagers were moving quickly, some of them running directly at Jonathan, trying to tackle him to the ground. He fought hard, swinging with his left hand as he fired into their bodies point blank with the handgun. He continued moving backward as he fought until he was in the opening of the door, screaming at the pilots to take off. He reloaded his weapon and continued firing as the helicopter left the ground and circled over the village. Looking down, Riley could see that the place was lost. There were no more neatly arranged groups of villagers waiting to be quarantined. Instead, she saw masses of bodies pouncing and chasing after panicked soldiers. Jonathan slammed the cabin door shut and fell back into his seat. "What the hell was that?" he shouted. "I don't know. You saw what they were doing. They were executing the infected. What would you do if you saw your family members and neighbors murdered?" Jonathan let out a sadistic laugh and holstered his pistol. "I think we saw 2 different things, Doc. I saw some rabid-ass people with bloodlust. They were out of their bodies crazy." He stopped and adjusted his shirt and looked back at her. "Did you get what you needed?" She nodded, then looked at his arm. There was a trickle of blood moving down his elbow. "You're hurt," she stated. Jonathan straightened his arm, looking at the cut on his right bicep. He removed a bandana from his pocket and tied it around the wound. "It's just a scratch. I'll get it looked at when we get back to D.C."